Welcome to the PBIS in the Classroom Module training from the Georgia Department of Education. The content from this module was adopted from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. This module is designed to support schools as they implement PBIS at the classroom level. The module can be used as a group learning experience or by individuals to refine classroom practices and learn how to use PBIS in their classrooms. The modules will cover material in the order in which they appear on the Benchmarks of Quality, the premier PBIS implementation survey. This is also a good order for building solid systems in the classroom. We begin with developing and teaching rules and routines, the basis for all effective classroom management systems. With Module 1, you will begin to create a climate in each classroom that promotes learning. In this module, you will learn about developing a classroom matrix, routines, teaching signals for getting class attention, teaching procedures, and pre-correcting. To download the activities and resources you will need for this presentation, please go to the PBIS section on the Georgia DOE website. You will find the section titled PBIS in the Classroom. Once you click on this link, you will find the activities that go with the training modules. For this module, you will want to download the activities for Module 1. Please take the time to print off these activities for the number of participants that are viewing this module. Pause the module while you are printing off the activities, then press play to continue. An important part of PBIS in Georgia is culturally responsive practices. Culturally responsive practices include the degree to which a school's programs, practices, procedures, and policies account for and adapt to the broad diversity of students' race, language, and culture. These practices prepare all students for a multicultural world. When we think about culture in schools, we include characteristics such as race, age, gender, socioeconomic status, rural, suburban, urban, religion, nationality, language, and ethnicity. As a PBIS leadership team, think about how you are preparing your students for living in a multicultural world. In this module, you will learn about developing a classroom matrix, routines, teaching signals for getting class attention, and teaching procedures. This module will also cover the first 3 items of Section 1 in the Benchmarks of Quality, Classroom Systems. Classroom rules are defined for each of the school-wide expectations and are posted in classrooms. Classroom routines and procedures are explicitly identified for activities where problems often occur, and expected classroom routines are taught. Before we get into the classroom matrix, rules, and routines, however, let's consider the importance of integrating academic and behavioral elements of response to intervention at the classroom level. A basic principle in the classroom is that for every academic task we give our students, they will need 2 sub-skills to be able to accomplish that task successfully. The first, of course, is an academic skill set. For example, if we ask a student to complete a long division problem, they will need to know how to subtract and multiply before they can successfully complete the division problems. The second skill set is behavior. If we ask students to work with a partner as they complete the division problem, they will need to know how to take turns, how to listen to each other, what voice level to speak in, how to ask for help, etc. If students are asked to work in pairs and haven't been taught the behavioral skills to do that, there's a good chance that this learning activity will not produce the results intended. As we discuss teaching in the classroom expectations, we need to emphasize the teaching to fluency. This fluency is critical because if students come from differing backgrounds, they will need to develop cultural capital. That is, they will need to learn that while certain things are acceptable or encouraged in their home or neighborhood setting, a different set of expectations may apply to the classroom setting. You may want to refer to Dr. Holly's work on validating, affirming, building, and bridging cultural gaps. Look for this reference in the Activities and Resource section. Remember, when punishment for not getting it is used instead of teaching to fluency, the result is disproportionate referrals. Research will be shared throughout the modules regarding the impact classroom management has on student engagement time, which is one of the most important influences in student achievement. In fact, the new Common Core State Standards embeds academic behaviors. When we look at the academic and behavioral elements of RTI at the classroom level, then, our task is to make sure that teaching of academics and behavior stays integrated. This means that teaching behavior is not seen as a separate subject from academics. It means that teaching the behavioral skills required to do math or reading activities is part of reading and math blocks. It means that spending a good part of the first 2 weeks of school teaching and practicing school and class procedures is an integral part of creating the conditions that students need to learn their academic subjects. Many studies have researched the impact that teaching expectations, rules, and procedures has on student behavior and student engagement time. Keep in mind that student engaged time is a key factor that improves student achievement. It is often the measuring stick that many researchers use to determine if a classroom management strategy is effective. While the language among the research may vary, the results are clear. Here's a sampling of research findings. A dependable system of rules and procedures provides structure for students and helps them to be engaged with instructional tasks. Teaching routines and rules to students at the beginning of the year and enforcing them consistently across time increases student academic achievement and task engagement. Clearly stating expectations and consistently supporting them lends credibility to a teacher's authority. Before we begin, go to the Activities and Resources and find the Self-Reflection Checklist. This tool is for you to reflect on and self-assess your current practices. Fill it out now. Once you complete the checklist, identify 1 or 2 areas that you would like to improve. Keep this self-reflection handy. You'll use it again at the end of the module. Pause the module as you do this activity. Press play when you are ready to continue. We begin with developing and teaching rules and routines, the basis for all effective classroom management systems. With Module 1, you will begin to create a climate in each classroom that promotes learning. The terms expectations and procedures. Although these terms are sometimes used interchangeably, here is how we use these terms in PBIS. Expectations are broad statements that apply to all people in all settings. They are general statements of behavior you expect in your school. Rules are more specific and apply throughout the day in all settings. Procedures are sequential steps that can help to operationalize expectations and rules. Therefore, they should be aligned with the expectations. They are numerous and are setting and activity specific. Expectations, rules, and procedures are similar in the following ways. They are stated positively, and they state the criteria for successful performance, and they must be taught and rehearsed. Another term we will be using is routine. A routine is a procedure that is followed with minimal or no reminders. This is a school's behavioral matrix. It identifies key school expectations and rules for how to follow those expectations in key settings. Your school may have already developed generic rules that apply to all classrooms. However, you also need a classroom matrix, which identifies what it means to follow the expectations during various activities in your particular classroom. The bullet points under each location are reminders of the key parts in these location-specific procedures that students should remember prior to entering that setting. The teacher uses these reminders to pre-correct and redirect students. The classroom matrix is similar in format and designed to the school-wide matrix. Across the top row are all of the environments or activities that will happen within a particular class. These activities vary from class to class. Sometimes these environments are decided at grade level or subject area meetings. However, there should be flexibility for individual teachers to include activities where they typically lose instructional time. Bullet points under Arrival clarify the specific rules that are expected of students when they arrive to the classroom. Note, in all the areas of the Be Respectful row, there's a bullet point or reminder that refers to voice level. There are also multiple references to following directions, use of materials, and respecting personal space. As these are being referenced throughout the day, they can be referenced in the class-wide column. Statements in the class-wide column follow the classic educational definition of a rule, in that there are only 4 to 5, they apply throughout the day, and they are behavioral. Your rules can be determined by reviewing the reminder bullet points in your matrix and looking for repeats. Once you've determined your rules, and you can use the reminder bullet points to either help clarify them, or as in the case of use all equipment and materials appropriately, or contribute, here are some helpful hints to follow when you are developing your matrix. Post your matrix so that it's big enough to use throughout the day. This is a teaching tool, as we will explain later in the section. Also, use icons or pictures for lower grades. Let's take a look at this matrix from a culturally responsive lens. Carolyn Evertson, a researcher and expert in classroom management, says that the purpose of good classroom management is to create conditions for learning. As classrooms become more diverse, this can only be accomplished when teachers are sensitive to variance in cultural experiences and values that their students bring to the classroom. For example, 2 rules on this matrix address the rules for speaking in group settings, cooperative learning groups, and whole groups. One is, wait your turn to speak. The other is, raise your hand to speak. These are common and important rules in most classrooms, yet many teachers list students not following these rules as their most annoying problem in the class. Cultural responsiveness tells us that we need to look at the match between our students' culture and the cultural norms we expect in our class. We need to be aware of where there's a mismatch and change our teaching strategies. For example, if students come from a culture where talking on top of one another in a group setting is the norm, the teacher may need to validate and affirm that while that practice may be acceptable in their home or social environments, during group discussions it is necessary for one person to speak at a time so that all can hear them. To help the student build new skills, the teacher may need to provide more opportunities for practice and to frequently reinforce emerging new behaviors. Also, the teacher would first want to reteach and practice the procedure before administering consequences for not following it. Finally, the teacher may need to bridge the cultural gap by changing their practice, such as incorporating more opportunities for choral responses within the academic lessons, or looking for times throughout the day when talking on top of one another is acceptable. We'll take some time to create a classroom matrix. Take a look at the blank matrix that was provided from the activities link. Also, take a look at the examples of some completed matrices that have been provided. And don't forget to validate, affirm, build, and bridge as you create your own matrix. This activity can be done individually or with a small group of teachers from the same grade level or subject. Pause this module as you do this activity. Press play when you are ready to continue. Next, we will begin walking you through the creation of your own classroom matrix. Now that you've reviewed some sample matrices, it is time for you to fill out your own matrix. First, list your school's expectations along the left side column, such as be respectful, be responsible, Be safe. Your classroom expectations should be the same as the school expectations. Pause the module while you do this activity, then press play when you are ready to continue. Next, across the top, identify and list the activities that are important in your classroom. Perhaps entering the classroom, turning in homework, getting supplies, cooperative learning groups, independent seat work, whole group, transitions, etc. When identifying your activities, here are some things to keep in mind. If there is an activity when students frequently misbehave, such as transition, make sure this activity is included. As we strive to be culturally responsive to students from a variety of economic, ethnic, and cultural backgrounds, it is unwise to assume that students already know what we expect from them. Ask yourself, what are my invisible assumptions about the social skills that my students have when they enter my classroom? Make sure these are included in the matrix. Also, identify an attention-getting signal. Pause the module while you do this activity, then press play when you are ready to continue. If you have a column labeled class-wide, fill this column in last. Now under each activity, list the reminders for each expectation. Remember to write the bullets using positive language, such as walk instead of don't run. Check to make sure there are no more than 3 to 5 bullet points in each box. Return to the class-wide column. If you already have a few class rules, you can put them in this column. Just associate them with your expectations. Or you look for patterns and repeated reminders in the reminder bullet points on your matrix. These patterns suggest a category or rule that applies throughout the day. It should be entered in the class-wide column. Pause the module while you do this activity, then press play when you are ready to continue. Finally, review your classroom matrix through a culturally responsive lens. Validate and affirm the cultural practices of your students by involving them in creating some of the rules. Enlisting input and feedback from parents is also an excellent way to get buy-in and support for creating a healthy classroom climate. Build skills by providing more opportunities for practice where necessary. Bridge cultural gaps by adapting your expectation in some areas. Pause the module while you do this activity, then press play when you are ready to continue. Now that you have developed your teaching rules and classroom matrix, let's look at developing procedures and routines. When students practice a sequential procedure that is aligned with class expectations, they follow the procedure on a regular basis, often without teacher reminders. It is a routine. It is important to define and teach classroom routines. Here are some examples of classroom procedures that your class should practice until they become routines. How to enter the class and begin work. How to predict the schedule for the day. What to do if you do not have materials. What to do if you need help. What to do if you need to go to the bathroom. What to do if you're handing in late material. What to do if someone is bothering you. Signals for moving throughout different activities, such as show me you are listening. How to determine if you are doing well in class. This last routine may require a rubric that outlines how a student can get an A and includes what percentage of the grade is determined by homework. This should be very low. Classwork, test grades, projects, class participation, etc. When defining and teaching routines, it is essential to establish a signal for obtaining class attention. Be able to quiet the class quickly saves instructional time. Finally, the main area where teachers lose instructional time is during transitions. This is also often when most problems occur. Developing and teaching effective transitions is very important. Here are some examples of routines at the secondary level. During class discussion, prepare for discussion by reading the required assignment in advance. Wait until the other person has finished speaking before you talk. Stay on topic. Respect others' opinions and contributions, and use appropriate expressions of disagreement. And when entering the classroom, enter the classroom before the bell rings. Take your seat and get out materials you need for class. Talk quietly until the bell rings. Begin the morning assignment on the side chalkboard when the bell rings. While kindergarten teachers naturally know the importance of teaching routines, teachers in older grades often assume that older students should know basic routines. This is not the case. Each teacher varies their routines. Also, often students at risk have a harder time transferring knowledge from one setting to another. It is important to take the time to teach and practice routines. However, practice at a high school level often takes the form of giving a lot of specific positive and corrective feedback for the first 2 weeks of school, followed by reviewing the procedural steps when they are not being followed. The younger the student, the more physical practice is needed. Attention-getting signals is one procedure that is a must for all classrooms. Not only does it increase instructional time, it also provides an opportunity to connect with students of varying backgrounds, and then makes them feel that they belong. Here are 3 types of attention-getting signals. The traditional format is teacher-centered, where communication is one way. This format can produce anxiety among students if they do not do it. An example would be the teacher giving a signal for eyes on me or turning out the lights. The next type is responsive. This signal uses two-way communication and requires a response from the students. It is less anxiety-producing for the students because they respond as a group. The final type is culturally responsive. This signal is responsive but has a cultural component. The teacher will need to have an understanding of their student's culture to create this signal, which may require student and parent input. As classes often have students of varying cultures, the teacher may change the signal they use periodically. This also keeps interest high. One of the key procedures that teachers need to teach is their signal for getting the class's attention. Take some time now to reflect on these questions. If you're viewing this with others, discuss your answers. What is your attention-getting signal? When do you use it? How do you teach it? Is it traditional, responsive, or culturally responsive? When you've finished your reflection and/or discussion, take some time to report out to the larger group and list the different attention signals that teachers use. Pause the module while you do this activity, then press play when you are ready to continue. There are many examples of attention-getting signals. You will need to refer to the activity video 1.1 under the videos section on the Georgia DOE PBIS website. Watch the 4 one-minute videos showing the examples of attention signals. After watching each video, take 1 minute in your small groups to determine if the signal is traditional, responsive, or culturally responsive. After watching all of the videos, think of ways to make the traditional and responsive signals culturally responsive. Now let's develop some classroom procedures. Take a minute to pause the module and pull out the form labeled Activity 1.2. Press play when you are ready to continue and receive instructions for this activity. This example of a classroom matrix lists key rules for each setting. In this activity, you will develop a sequence chain for key procedures. Often, instructional time is lost in the class when procedures have not been clearly thought out by the teacher. This is another area where it's important to make visible your invisible expectations. Take some time to complete your blank activity 1.2 form step by step. Pause the module in order to work on each step. Press play when you are ready to go on to the next step. This whole process should take about 15 minutes, depending on how many routines you have included. Let's begin. Across the top of the form, list your school or class expectations. You may also list no more than 5 class-wide rules. In the first vertical row, list the various activities or routines in your school day. In the last section, develop the sequence chains that make up the key activities for your classroom. If there is an area where you are losing instructional time that is not covered on the worksheet, add it. When you have finished, you may want to share this with a trusted colleague. Ask them if they can find any steps that you may have missed. Your sequence chains will probably include your rules in this step. Keep in mind that misbehavior often occurs when students are unclear about the following areas: voice level, whom to talk to, what to talk about, how, when, if they can move around the class, how to get help, and what to do until they get help during the activity. Also make notes about any signals you plan to use during the activity. Finally, review your routines through a culturally responsive lens. For instance, the tendency is to create routines that minimize the amount of socializing students do. However, if there are only a few children of a particular culture in your classroom, opportunities to socialize are necessary for them to feel part of the classroom. Do your students need to move from one place to another silently, or can they talk in a quiet voice? The key is, if a teacher is going to expect quiet and teach it, it is important to examine why, to consider the match with culturally and linguistically diverse students of varying developmental levels to make appropriate adaptations. Now that you've developed your classroom matrix, we will start to focus on teaching procedures. Behavior errors often occur because students do not have the appropriate skills, or they have skill deficits. Students have not developed skills to fluency. Students do not know when to use skills. Students have not been taught specific classroom procedures and routines. Or, skills are not taught in context. Often we assume that our students share our cultural experiences and values. This error on the part of the teacher can lead to more behavioral errors on the part of their students. The goal of teaching class expectations, rules, and procedures is for students to gain fluency in their behavioral skills as they relate to your classroom. Now that you have developed your rules and procedures, you have to teach them to your students. The mistake is sometimes made assuming that if we have told someone what we want them to do, then we have taught them how to do it. This is not the case. Telling is not teaching. A study of 29 elementary schools showed a 10% improvement in on-task behavior when routines were taught the first week of class. When replicated at the secondary level, the difference was a 13% improvement in on-task behavior. Instructional time can vary as much as 50 days per year among classes in the same school. Imagine the impact this has on student achievement. John Herner was the president of National Association of State Directors of Special Education. His words emphasized the importance of teaching behavioral expectations. If a child doesn't know how to read, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to swim, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to multiply, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to drive, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to behave, we teach or punish. Why can't we finish the last sentence as automatically as we do the others? There's some key elements of a good lesson for teaching routines. These include: connect the procedure to the school expectations. Give examples and non-examples taken from classroom settings and situations. When modeling, students should model positive examples only. The teacher may model the non-example. Students have enough practice with non-examples, and sometimes this can upstage the positive example. Always finish with an example of what to do. Finally, use examples from real life. Do not give students any new ideas of how to misbehave. Include modeling and role-playing to teach new skills and provide students with practice opportunities. At the higher grade level, this often takes the form of discussion using questions from the higher level of Bloom's taxonomy. Give feedback and acknowledgement to ensure students display the expected or taught behaviors. This should be more frequent when a student is first learning the procedure and gradually faded out when the procedure becomes a routine. Once a routine is established, occasional specific positive feedback should sustain the routine. Include in the feedback the positive result from the following the routine. Teach heavily the first 2 weeks of school and reinforce as needed throughout the year. Even well-established routines may need to be reviewed after a vacation break. Here's an example of a format to use when creating your behavioral lesson plans. In keeping with culturally responsive practices, the examples must connect with all students. Notice, in this sample lesson plan, the purpose of the lesson plan is defined. Teaching examples are shared. The student activities and/or role plays are determined, and follow-up activities are decided. It is important that all these elements are covered when you are developing your lesson plans. When considering culturally responsive practices, it is also important to keep in mind that there are great differences in language skills among students of various ethnic and socioeconomic groups. Also, students with disabilities may also need more than one modality to understand a lesson. When developing your lesson, teach to different modalities. Use examples that connect with all students, and allow enough practice time. You will need to pause the module while you refer to the activity titled Video 1.2. As a reminder, you can find this video under the PBIS in the classroom page on the Georgia DOE website. You will see an example of a teacher conducting a behavior skill lesson. Note how the teacher did each of the steps. There are examples for both elementary school and high school, depending on which level you will need. If you are viewing this video in a group, you may consider pausing the module to discuss what the teacher did that you thought was effective and what you have found to be effective in your own classroom. Now that you've seen some examples, let's spend some time developing lesson plans. First, choose one routine. Develop a lesson plan for that routine. Share your lesson with a partner or a colleague. Get feedback on strengths of the lesson and possible ways to improve. After you deliver your lesson, make notes on what went well and what you might want to refine the next time. You can find a blank lesson plan in the Activities and Resources labeled Activity 1.3. Pause the module as you access this form and complete the activity. Press play when you are ready to proceed. Let's review why it's important to teach behavior. First, behaviors are prerequisites for academics. Every academic task we ask a student to complete requires two subsets of skills, an academic and a behavioral skill set. If we ask students to work in a small group on a math problem and they do not know how to take turns talking or how to manage their time, they will not be able to complete the academic task. Second, procedures and routines create structure. We know that for learning to occur, an individual must first have their basic need of safety met. This is true of adults and children. Dependable procedures and routines create a safe structure and environment that meets our need for safety. Without this, children do not learn. Third, repetition is the key to learning new skills. For a child to learn something new, it needs to be repeated an average of 8 times. Adults average 25 times. For a child to unlearn an old behavior and replace with a new behavior, the new behavior must be repeated an average of 28 times. How many times have you taught your classroom procedures? Is it enough for them to be routines? Now you've created a classroom matrix and developed and taught your classroom procedures. How do you get your students to follow your procedures on a routine basis? The answer is pre-correcting. Just as a coach reviews the key parts of a play before sending his or her players onto the court, teachers use pre-corrects to review the key expectations for upcoming activities. Pre-correcting is short, taking 2 to 5 minutes. It's used prior to a transition or a new activity. It briefly reminds students of behavior expectations in the upcoming activity. It can refer to the matrix as a visual. Helps reduce the need to correct students for misbehavior. And finally, helps to maintain a high ratio of positives to correctives. Now that you've created your classroom matrix, developed and taught your classroom procedures, and reviewed what pre-corrections are, it is important to consider how you set up your classroom environment. All of us are impacted by the environments that we participate in on a daily basis. Think about your visit to the grocery store. Do you notice that most grocery stores set up their produce, bakery, and floral sections toward the front of the store when you walk in? This is done intentionally so that you have a full sensory experience upon entering their store, which impacts whether or not you will continue to shop there. When we think about classroom environments, your classroom should be set up with the same thought in mind. When students or parents come to your room, is it set up in a way that draws them in? Is your room clean, neat, organized, and a place where students want to be? This should be taken into consideration when you're setting up your room. Sugai, Colvin, Horner, and Lewis Palmer created a 10-point checklist to assist teachers in assessing their implementation of PBIS at the classroom level. The 5th point of this scale addresses room arrangement. According to Sugai, teachers should create a function layout so that classroom activities have locations. The teacher is able to monitor the whole class and traffic patterns are established. We'll begin by looking at a key tool in arranging your classrooms, VAT. How do you begin to arrange your room to support learning and appropriate classroom behavior? It's always best to start with a clean, uncluttered room. Then arrange your room through 3 lenses: visibility, accessibility, and task. Each of these elements is important to consider in designing a room that keeps your students engaged in learning. Visibility. Can you see your students? Can your students see you and the instructional materials? Accessibility. Is the room free of congestion so that students can easily get to the learning materials? Can you access the teaching materials that you need easily? Also, can you get access to all your students? One of the most important tools a teacher has to increase student engagement is proximity. Not all students can sit in the front row, but when a teacher moves around the room, every student will benefit from being close to the teacher. Having access to all students requires a clear path through desks. Finally, what is the task that you want your students to do? What is the goal of your learning activity? Given that instruction will vary throughout the day or even throughout the class, room arrangements should adjust based on the purpose of the instruction. Teachers need to teach the routines of having students move their desks or tables to a different place in the room. Every furniture arrangement supports a different type of learning. When students are seated in rows, it helps them work independently. This arrangement also can lower the number of disruptive behaviors. Seating students in groups facilitates group learning. This type of structure supports group problem solving and application of knowledge. Additionally, this structure validates and affirms cultures that value community building and collective work and responsibility. When students are working at learning stations, it is important that they do not disrupt others around them, and that they are not distracted by the work of others. During group discussions, sitting in a circle arrangement helps to communicate that everyone has an equal voice. Using the template for Activity 1.4, diagram your current room arrangement or recreate your room online by going to the following web address. Next, analyze your room arrangement for visibility and accessibility and overall environment. And finally, exchange with a colleague for feedback on your classroom environment plan and what you will change to improve or enhance how it's currently set up. Pause the module while you complete this activity, then press play when you are ready to continue. Let's review the self-reflection you completed at the beginning of the module and create an action plan. First, review your answers on the self-reflection. Then, revisit your answers and consider how your own culture of origin impacts your current practice. Make any changes based on the information you have learned. Think of where you can validate, affirm, build, and bridge connections with all of your students, including those with a high-risk ratio. Finally, identify 1 or 2 strategies that you will use to improve your rules and routines system. Pause the module as you complete this activity. Press play when you are ready to continue. Teachers can spend their whole career inquiring into the question, how can I improve my classroom management? You may consider to have a colleague observe you, teaching a lesson or teaching a procedure or transition where you've lost instructional time. Or you can network in your PLCs or your grade level meetings on creating effective signals for getting class attention, culturally responsive practices, procedures for gaining instructional time, and ways to use the classroom matrix as a visual. And the final option is share books and internet resources. There are thousands of great ideas that are available. However, oftentimes we don't have the time to research these ideas. Start by building a plan of how you can bring new ideas into the classroom environment. Congratulations! You've completed the first of 5 PBIS in the Classroom modules. Look to find this module posted on the Georgia DOE website. Please contact your Georgia Department of Education Technical Assistance Partner or your school climate specialist from your RESA if you have any further questions regarding this content or need support in implementing this content. Thank you to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, as well as these individuals and organizations for the primary content of this module. Also, a special thank you to our school climate specialists, Debbie Keene, Irene Denmark, Jan Mendens, and Rob Johnson, who contributed to the review and content enhancement of this module.